goodness. Big move Monday. Look out. A way to end the tournament.
So what's happening, people? Welcome back to the Quad Pod, sponsored by Poseidon Strength and Adidas Wrestling. Make sure you're using our discount codes at checkout when you visit our awesome sponsors. All that info is below, along with all of our direct contact information. We got a cool email this week, got a couple of DMs from some of the different people that normally watch and listen to the show, as well as all the comments. We appreciate that. As always, happy to be joined by Robbie, Austin, and Kevin. This is episode 23. This is the Michael Jordan episode, gentlemen. Yeah. I know we've gone with the football analogies, but this is the Michael Jordan episode because he's the GOAT, and I don't give a damn what you say. But please make sure that you are sharing, and subscribing, as well as all those different comments that you guys love to leave, whether it is, like I said, an email, DMs, commenting below, any of it. But we've got a really fun show. As we said last week, we're going to have a guest on this week, and that guest is Executive Director of NWCA, Mike Moyer. We'll get to his interview a bit later. We're talking about a good bit of things that hopefully you guys like once you listen to it. And we'll probably have him on once again. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't get a chance to even get to, a lot of questions and things that we had for him. He had 30 minutes to talk to us before he had to jump, but it was an awesome interview. Honestly, we hope that you guys enjoy it. We'll also dig into RAF before we even get to that. Their RAF 2 is coming up this week. And we'll also talk about some of the wrestle-offs. We're a week shy of the season starting and getting to, All-Star Classic, and then obviously more wrestle-offs and things like that are going to be happening. But as always, we do the weigh-in before we jump into our topics. And my weigh-in this week, my shout-out goes to Shannon Scoville. And the reason being is because I got a chance to talk to her this week, last week, sorry, for a study that she is doing. So for those of you who don't know Shannon, awesome person, also works for the NCAA, but she's also a professor at University of Tennessee. And she's doing a study with another professor, I forget which, where she said the professor is from, that she is working with. But the study is on the relationship between, and the kind of the interaction between journalists and athletes. So she had posted it on LinkedIn. I sent her a quick DM, was like, hey, I had liked it on LinkedIn, forgot to go back to it and respond to her. But I was like, hey, if you still want, people for the study, I'm more than happy to jump on a Zoom call and talk to you about it. So I was really excited to, one, talk to her because she's awesome to talk to, but two, be a part of a really cool study. I know it is something that I have mentioned a number of times on this show and sometimes get dinged for it, but being a journalist is really cool for me. I take a lot of pride in it. I got a degree in English literature and my minor is communications, journalism, PR. So being able to be a journalist for as long as I have been is a very big deal and a point of pride for me. So being part of a study is awesome, and being able to talk to her about some of the questions and things that we talked about was really cool. Whenever that does come out, we will obviously push that. I get a copy of that. She said that she will send it to me whenever it does come out. But shout out to her. I really appreciate her including me in that. So I was really happy to do it and answer any questions. And hopefully at some point we have her on here as well. I would love to have her join us and join the conversation, and not just talk about the study, but also talk about, everything that she's learned since kind of jumping into this crazy wrestling community that we're all now a part of. But again, shout out to her. Love being a part of the study and looking forward to all the research that she does. Robbie, on you.
Shannon is like the most positive person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
She is always excited, always happy, always kind, always supportive. Like, she's always there if you need something. Shannon is a badass. She was also a swimmer at American, I believe. So she has a pretty strong background in athletics as well. So yeah, awesome shout out for her. Shannon's awesome. We're lucky to have her too. She's a great writer.
Yeah.
A lot of great stories for NCAA.com. So yeah, kudos to Shannon. I like that. My shout out this week, because I've interacted with like 7 different ones this week, is to all the SIDs that are going to be bothered over the next few weeks for updates to lineups and starting lineups and rankings and all that stuff. So shout out to those guys for handling the barrage of questions that they're undoubtedly going to get from people who don't normally interact with them and don't genuinely care about wrestling, but have to write about it for their one story a year. So good on them. I appreciate the relationships I've built with those guys. Um, we've got some great ones in the ACC. So shout out to all of them.
Awesome. Yeah, they don't get enough credit. Um, I did say, it's funny you say that because during that conversation with Shannon, she asked like, what's a huge barrier for getting interviews with athletes? And I was like, the ADs. However, it's great that we have that guardrail because in today's society, getting to athletes is way too easy. So the fact that journalists, actual journalists and people that do similar things that we do have to go through them to get to these athletes to do an official interview is always great. So yeah, another, great shout out because even though they are kind of sometimes a pain in the ass to deal with, they're also very necessary to deal with because these are still student athletes and young kids that we're dealing with, and having that buffer is always good. Austin.
Yeah, I'll do a quick shout out to all the EIWA coaches I've been reaching out to the past few weeks here. Like I said last week, I'm putting together a nice preseason content. And coaches are nice enough to just hop on phone calls with me and try and figure out lineups and just see what their thoughts are. And because I want to be accurate in these breakdowns and these previews, and they could easily not give me the time of day because they're obviously busy doing other things, right? But they're chiming in and saying, "Oh, this guy is actually at this way. Expect this guy to redshirt for now, but things happen, So it's kind of good, to get that transparency with them, and and have some other conversations with them. So shout out to those coaches, and I do also want to give a shout out to the Navy Classic that's coming up in the next opening weekend on November 2nd. I feel like there's a lot of chatter about the All-Star match on November 1st in Rutgers, but Navy Classic is pretty tough every year. This year's no exception. List of teams are American, Bloomsburg, Binghamton, Bucknell, Drexel, George Mason, Nebraska, Morgan State, most likely, Pitt, and UVA. So a lot of EIWA, a few MAC schools, some ACC schools, and then Nebraska in there is obviously the big draw. So a lot of good early season matchups there, and just kind of want to get that on people's radars because there's the Princeton Open that day as well, and a lot of wrestling going on opening weekend. But Navy Classic I think is a little underrated, a little underappreciated, and I think it's just going to get better from here on out. So make sure you tune into that. If you're in the area, go stop in and watch it live. It should be a good event.
Nice. Kevin.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out a couple things. Cornerstone University here in Grand Rapids, they have their Blue vs. Gold wrestle-offs coming this Thursday. I was asked to be on the mic for that, so I'm very excited for it. If you're in town, 7:30 p.m. Thursday the 23rd at Mole Arena. Just Google Cornerstone University Mole Arena. I don't have the address, but it's out there somewhere. So check that out. Wrestle-offs are always fun, especially this is a program that's been around. I think this is the 4th or 5th year total, like that it's been around. So it's still developing. It's still bringing in guys who are trying to compete for a lineup spot immediately versus guys who have been in the room for a couple years now. So that should be really exciting. And go support your local teams. Additionally, I thought this was funny. So I'm going to Central Michigan this weekend because it's homecoming. We have a friend who's turning 40. Shout out Megan Gleason, formerly Megan Howell, good friend of ours. And so we're going to go up there and celebrate Saturday. Great times. Homecoming is always fun. Central Michigan has their wrestle-offs the Sunday after homecoming. And I was like, that's such a great move to keep your guys out of trouble. You guys who are trying to compete for a spot, you better be ready the Sunday after homecoming. And then it reminded me, Borelli used to do this too. So I was talking to a buddy of mine who wrestled for him back in the day, and he's like, I never went to a Central Michigan versus Western Michigan. That's like the big rivalry game. He's like, I never went to the game. I never went to a tailgate. I never did any of that while I was at Central because Borelli would sign us up for an early season tournament. He'd figure out what weekend it was, and he'd find a tournament. So he'd load us on a bus and get us the hell out of town. So it's the right move. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice coaching hack. That's genius. Awesome. Well, you.
Oh, and shout out to
does.
Johnny Lovett too, assistant coach. That was announced, I think, a week ago or something.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I was hoping for, and Lovett stays in town. So fantastic stuff for the Chippewas.
Yeah,
I love it.
No.
there you go. Kevin, just make sure you stay out of trouble at homecoming.
No, I won't make no promises.
All right. Well, that's it for the weigh-in. Let's jump to RAF. So I know we've talked about RAF and some of their decisions on matchups, but this week we're gonna make some picks, talk about some of our favorite matches, and go from there. So let's start out. So what does the card look like from the, I guess, the USA side? I'll go with that. Kyle Dake, Mason Paris, Pat Downey, and Jake Varner, Kalen Jemison, Caden Henschel, Helen Maroulis, David Carr, James Green, Starachi, and Nate Jackson all wrestling. Now we'll hit their opponents as we kind of hit each one of these matchups. But at the top, we've got Kyle Dake versus Boris Makoev. And it's hard to, I wish, yeah, they do have the weight classes. So 190, which honestly will always be crazy to me to see Kyle Dake at 190 pounds. Because we've seen him so incredibly small in the past, but Kyle Dake at 190 is fascinating to me. But I don't think, I feel like at 190, he's probably one of the most lethal people for the first time in a long time. I remember when he went up to 86 way back when he had to wrestle against Jaden Cox. And it was like, this is insane. Like this is the wildest thing ever. Now you're like, Kyle Dake is huge. He's really filled out. And that obviously comes with age, as we all know. What do we make of this matchup? Do we feel like Kyle Dake gets maybe a little bit more competition in this one, or are we all taking Dake? Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going with Dake, and I'm also going to refer to this guy as Boring Makoev from now on because that just seems funny to me. I don't know. I don't know enough about this Makoev guy. All I know is that Kyle Dake is a super freak, and the dude is still on the scene, which means he is super committed to getting high level competition consistently, even at his advanced age, I guess.
Is that how we're putting it? We're advanced.
I think advanced sounds better than old, right? Like,
as the most advanced person here, I accept this.
I accept it.
Yeah, let's go with advanced. So, but no, I think he's gonna go out there. He's a showman. We've seen him do this time and time again at big events. As soon as he gets an opportunity to, toss him, he's going to. He doesn't really look any less explosive. Really, it's wild because I feel like Dake has been so consistent. It's the one Olympic match that he kind of just fell apart in. Other than that, he's usually putting it together pretty well. So I don't expect him in a one match situation like this to show up with anything other than his A game. I think he's going to be ready to go.
Yeah. Robbie, your thoughts on the Dake match?
Yeah, I like that they're going with some kind of international feel and have some credentialed wrestlers. Makoev was, I think, a world silver several years ago. He was an Olympian, so he's got credentials. I don't see him keeping up with Dake, and I don't see a lot of people keeping up with Dake, but I think we definitely heavily favors Kyle in this matchup. So I don't expect anything other than domination from Kyle Dake.
True. Austin?
I will be taking Kyle Dake as well. As the least experienced of the quad pod, he's my age, so that's always good. And
least advanced.
Yeah, he's least advanced, but he's he's younger on the inside, I guess, right? With the way he ages. But yeah, also Penn State crowd. It's kind of home cooking for him, home field advantage, whatever you want to call it. So I think he's going to come out and win this one pretty easy. Maybe not pretty easy, but I'll give him a few point lead.
Yeah. I will also go with Sir Dynamite. He's no longer kid. His age starts with a 3 now, so he moves on to Sir Dynamite. But like Kevin said, I like that he's staying active. It's only going to bode well for him when the next World Team Trials comes around and he's facing off most likely against Zahid Valencia one more time, or Carter Starachi for that matter, again, to make the world team. So I'm going to go with Dake. I'm also going to pivot. I don't want to hit every single one of these. I'm going to kind of cherry pick some of them, and talk about some more than others, obviously. And I'm skipping to Pat Downey versus Jake Varner. We all know where Kevin sits. There were some words that Kevin used in a different show where he said that Jake Varner was going to kick Pat Downey's ass. So we all know where Kevin sits.
I did say that.
And I'm sure he's sticking with that. There's no kicking in Kevin when it comes to that. I'm going to start with Austin. And do you think that Jake Varner still has a little something left in the tank?
I mean, you got to think so, right? He wouldn't be wrestling if he didn't. He's in the room every day with the Penn State guys.
He's in the room training right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the room right now. That's what I've heard too. And he might be coming up on 40 here, but you got to think he's still in pretty damn good shape. And I would imagine maybe if not beating, going with a lot of these high level guys. And maybe he requested a lesser opponent to see where he's at. And Downey might be one of those guys. Not throwing shade at Pat, but you don't know what you're going to get with Pat, really. He kind of signs up for stuff and either flakes out or shows up half committed at best, and I think Varner's going to, make it might be ugly, but I think he still got it, to answer your question.
Robbie?
I think it's not the age, it's the miles. And Pat Downey has put significantly more miles on his body, both on road and off road in this analogy.
This
a lot of off-roading. A lot of off-roading. Those shocks
in a Civic, oddly enough. So no, I mean, Jake Varner, if you just look at the lineup that he has been wrestling with for the last 10 years, and it's multiple national NCAA champions, and then you got world champs, Olympic champs, there's no doubt in my mind that Varner, even if he's not in his Olympic championship phase of his life, can still go with anybody. So I'm not going to bet against the gold medalist. I'm going to go with Varner.
Yeah.
In a one match scenario, right? This isn't a tournament. This isn't some big crazy thing. It's, hey, do you think Jake Varner can show up for one match, completely trained and prepared and ready to go?
If it's 6 minutes. Yeah. It might be 2.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be leg lace, head pinch. It's over. Or not.
But at the same time, we've seen Pat Downey do some wild shit, and there's nothing to say that he couldn't come out and just go full PD3 and toss Varner,
full Leroy
I
Jenkins.
don't think it's going to happen.
No, I mean there is. I'm saying that's not going to happen.
I don't think it will either.
Yeah,
but there's always that risk with Pat.
Yeah. I will say that
other things as well, but that's
it does seem like he is invested in this match though. Between
I agree.
Going and doing the promos and doing the social media posts with RAF, everything that he's been doing would allude to him being invested, kind of the same way that he was invested the last time we saw him on the mat, where, what was it, Olympic trials, I believe, was the last time that I can remember seeing him wrestling, when he was wrestling up against Carter Starachi and then gassed out. But he was committed then. I feel like he's committed now. I don't think he has what it takes to beat Jake Varner, even a Jake Varner that hasn't wrestled in front of people in 10 years, it feels like. But still, it's fascinating enough, because Pat Downey has been the guy that he has been, where he's done both the on-road and off-road things that he has done, and been one of those guys that you can't turn away from. And
I really like this analogy. It's like an off-road car wreck.
Yeah, but he's up against a gold medalist in Jake Varner, who we haven't seen wrestle a very long time. So it's just well, this is fun, right? This to me makes it fun.
Here's the thing though. They pay you to do those promos, right? He's not doing this for free. He's showing up for a paycheck.
True.
Because he's a name.
That's
they don't
fair.
have Jake Varner doing the promos because Jake Varner, for whatever reason, doesn't seem like he's got quite as much charisma, right? Like if this was a competition to see who was going to be the best MC, I'd probably pick Pat Downey.
Personality competition, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is not well, it depends on your, best friend competition. I'm going with Jake Varner, I think. But
mean,
if you're going
Jake
for an
smash
MC,
Pat is what I feel like is going to happen.
Yeah,
but now who's to say that maybe it wasn't just on Pat's bucket list that he really wanted to be on Fox and Friends by the time he turned 30? Or turned 40.
In one way or another, he was going to get there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he did it.
No,
he did it.
I think it ultimately is a fun match. And I know like people are gonna be like, well, you shit on the match between Caden Henschel and I didn't
couldn't
shit
give
on
a single shit about that match.
This
also has an Olympic gold medalist and somebody who we've seen make a run to the world championship.
That's the caveat, right?
Let's not compare.
I also
two.
said that they were misplaced in this. I said that they should be promoting it and we should see their face everywhere doing interviews and everything that they already do very well instead of wrestling in this. That was what I said. Not to say that they were bad wrestlers or anything of the sort. Just felt like the energy was being misplaced. That's all. And also, for what it's worth, I'm taking Caden in that match as well, by the way.
If we eliminated the Olympic gold medal that Jake Varner has, he was still a 4-time finalist and 2-time champ in the NCAA.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Got lots of
Turns out he was okay at wrestling.
Turns out he knew a thing or two about a thing or two. Yeah. So yeah, the other funny, so to talk about the influencer match a little bit is looking at the weight classes in here. So like I said, we have Dake that was at 190, but the Mason Paris match, the Pat Downey match, both at unlimited. And then you get to this match between Henschel and Jimison, and it just says open. So I'm like, what weight is this? Where are these guys weighing in? And mind you, this is on the RAF website. It just says open. So
is that not the same as unlimited?
It apparently is not. I feel like this is what they did is, when you get that like that off-season flyer in the mail where you get a chance to wrestle in the open division and you and your kid can both wrestle in the tournament. That's what I feel like this is. They put them in the open division where they'll find out what catch weight they're wrestling when they get there. That kind of a thing.
It's the Madison system where you just weigh everyone in and these 5 are in the bracket, the next 5 are in the bracket. You know?
That's how it works. Just show up within 5 pounds of each other and you're fine.
We somehow see this like Keelan Jimison. I don't know who this person is. I'm too experienced to understand this.
Too advanced.
We're going to see him wrestle Varner.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't get
it. The other match
not for me to get though. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah. The other match I want to jump to is David Carr versus Rita, and I'm interested in this because David Carr is coming off an upsetting, I guess, performance at Worlds, right? So, but however, we have seen David Carr competing like crazy, and he is continuing to compete, similar to what Kyle Dake has been doing and competing and everything else. But what do we make of this match? I mean, the guy's from Egypt that he's wrestling, and do we see a full-on David Carr come out and just take a business as usual, or do we get fun super duck misdirection David Carr in this match?
I mean, I think you start off with a pretty solid double leg, right? I think if you're gonna screw around with some cool super ducks and doing some other stuff, you got to at least start off by letting this guy know, what's coming for him if he, steps wrong. So yeah, I think you go out there, you get a takedown, maybe you get a turn, you see how easy that happens. And then, if you want to give the fans a little bit of something extra, then you get a chance to do it. But, the one thing that is scary with freestyle though, is if you screw around for a second, the match can flip real fast. So you got to figure out too, if your Carr, am I going in here to just put on, make a statement and get a win quick, or am I going in here to have some fun and, see what I can do to remind people just how special I am.
Yeah, and not for nothing. I mean, Rita's an Olympian and a continental champ, so he's not a slouch.
Yeah.
So it'll be a good test for David coming back.
For sure. The other match I want to jump to is the green match against Sokotanov, who we know beat Kyle Dake. I mean, it's obviously like 3 years ago, but he has a win over Dake, right? So this match, I think for me, is probably the most interesting because I feel like him and Green are as close as they are, right? Like four-time world medalist, and he's a Euro champion 3 times over. I feel like this is going to be a match that is a good test for James Green. We've obviously seen him back on the mat a couple of times since his return a couple of years ago. What, two years ago, I think, at this point. But this is probably for me the closest in caliber match for this. Austin, your thoughts on James Green and Sokotanov?
It's tricky because I've seen James Green wrestle really, really well and then not so well. And obviously, a lot of that wrestling not so well was probably before his injury. He had that big weight cut, down to make, what was it, 65 kilograms that one year.
Yeah.
So that obviously affected him. So I think all these memories just in my brain. I don't know which James Green's going to show up, but if really good James Green shows up, I think he might win this one here too. And I wanted to see a really tough James Green because that's when he's most fun to watch, obviously, right? So yeah, I think I like James Green in this one, assuming the best version of James Green shows up, and I think it'll be a good match. I agree with you. It's probably the best one on paper between the two, um, statistics wise, achievement wise, but it should be exciting. But I do like James Green, and I hope we see what he's capable of again, and kind of see him come back to the old version of himself where he's really, really tough.
Yeah. Kevin?
James Green is 29 years old.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem crazy? I saw
Weird,
that
right?
and I was like, no way. And then I was like, he's only 3 years older than David Carr. I was like, that seems weird too.
Yeah.
But
He's
I
a
guess
fake
David,
hip too, doesn't he?
yeah, he's got robot hips. No,
I need one of
he's
those.
awesome. I can't believe now that I think about it. Yeah, he retired then because of the hip issue at like 26, 27.
Yep.
Like that's nuts. It's a good thing he came back. No, I think he's going to get it done. I mean, if you think about if you just look at about the college guys he's been training with the last couple of years. I mean, Ridge Lovett, obviously, Antrell Taylor just won an NCAA title. He's working out with good dudes in that room consistently. So I'm sure he'll be ready to go. He didn't forget how to wrestle. I'm sure if anything, he's coming back with more energy and enthusiasm to keep competing because you never know how much longer you have until it's gone, right? So, yeah, I think James is going to get it done. Plus, I'll be damned if I'm going to come on this show and be like, I think this dude from Slovakia is going to win. I don't think. I only think Americans are going to win.
Yeah, this is a complete homer take on
Yeah.
RAF. Like
Yeah.
I hope and anybody listening or watching this like doesn't think that we're not gonna probably take the Americans in this unless
Yeah.
it was like Dake versus Sajalayev, right? Like very big difference.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, suck a ton of. You're not getting my vote, loser.
we're very big
Stupid
homers when it
name.
comes to this RAF card, right? But no, I do think that this match is going to be really good between Green and Sakozanov. Like they'll, like I said, it on paper this is certainly the closest in my mind, with all the different matchups that we have in here. Robbie, your thoughts?
Yeah, new hip greasy all the way. Lace man's getting paid. I mean, I can't say I need a new hip, so I feel you, James. I don't think I'm going to be competing against world medalists once I get my new one, but more power to you. I mean, from everything I know, he feels a lot better and feels comfortable again, which is kind of a game changer. And being able to compete without pain and kind of just be free, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think he's enjoying it again, which is also a big thing. So I got greasy all the way here.
Yeah, I hope it's an offensive Greasy, honestly, because we've seen him
Yeah.
shut down his offense and we've seen him go, completely offensive, right? So I'm hopeful that it is an offensive Greasy that we see because that would hopefully in turn be the person that we see when we get back to US Open and World Team Trials and stuff like that too. The last one is Carter Sirachi, Nate Jackson. I was pleasantly surprised to see this match, honestly, because you didn't know where either one of them stood when it came to wrestling, right? You had no idea kind of what the next move for Sirachi was, where, what was going on with Nate Jackson. With that said, I still take Sirachi in this. I'm sure he's training and I remember people saying that he was not with Nittany Lion. He's obviously listed under Nittany Lion on here, and he's been in the room, and people were saying he wasn't signed or whatever else. I mean, all signs are pointing to, the big lion in the room right now. So I don't see that, any indication that he's not, and he's on the card at Penn State. Pretty sure, these coaches will be in his corner as well. I'll be surprised if they're not. But I am taking Carter Sirachi in this one. Kevin?
I'm going handsome Nate Jackson.
Yes.
Talked to him a bunch of times. He's awesome. 190. I mean, he's a big dude, he's obviously going to be losing a little bit more weight than I think Carter is going to have to for it. He's very tall. But no, I mean, I'm doing it just because I know and I like Nate Jackson. I know he's very capable. I mean, there was a point there where he was like, he took Jaden to best 2 out of 3 at 92 kilograms or whatever. And then Jaden either took first or second in the world, I think, that year. So the dude at his very peak was right there with the best on the planet. So I'm going back to the one match scenario, man. You get one opportunity to show up and wrestle hard and get it done. I'm going to take the veteran handsome Nate right here.
There you go. Austin?
I think I like Carter. Just the way he wrestled really tight with was it Dake at was it US Open or the trials, one of those?
Trials, yeah.
Yeah, the trials. So he had a really close one there. And yeah, they are teammates. They might wrestle a little bit in the room and have a little bit of a feel, but I feel like just Carter coming off 5 titles and, still being hungry and active in it a little more. I think I like Carter in this one.
Robbie?
In the handsomeness competition, I've got Nate Jackson all day. I don't know. I'm very interested to see what both of them look like, and neither of them have been on the mat. I mean, clearly we saw Carter in March, but with everything that's gone on with him and being in and out of the spotlight over the last few months, I'm interested to see where he's at physically and mentally.
He has been posting from the Penn State room. I did see him post like a video of being at practice a time or two.
Okay. Dude, are they going to have like a personalized trophy like they had at Super 32 that's a pair of shoes? Because if that's the case, I'm going Sirachi. But I don't know. I just want a competitive match. I think kind of what Kevin said
with that joke. Pretty good.
I feel good about it. Been thinking about that one. I think what Kevin said in a one match scenario, I mean, I could certainly see Nate Jackson making a push, and what we saw, kind of same thing we've hit on with PD3, like the results that Reese Humphrey got out of both of them at their peak was amazing. And I don't know, I don't think we're going to see Nate at his peak. And I think Carter overall is a better wrestler. So I would lean towards Carter, but I would love to see a really competitive high level match here. But I think it's, you've got to lean towards Carter with what we've seen from him over the last few years.
Yeah. Pretty sure we're all taking Helen. We're not skipping over it, but it's Helen, guys.
Helen, and she gets all the poutine she wants.
Yeah, let's be serious. And then
We're
the other one is
skipping the women's match because we don't like women's matches. It's because it's not going to be competitive.
Yeah, it's because it's just it's Helen, guys. We know where we stand on that.
Remember when she won a world championship like 6 weeks ago?
Yeah,
and then like
when she wasn't even planning to go out for the team. That's cool.
Yeah, right. Like just stop it. The only other match on here, obviously, that we didn't talk about is Mason Paris wrestling the Moldovan Mason Paris. You can't tell me that
you can't say Mason Paris is not an overweight MMA fighter. So no, I'm not going to give you that one.
I'm looking at the headshots. That's what I'm looking
Their
at.
heads are the same shape. I'll give you
I'm
that.
looking at the headshots. The hair goes the opposite way, but there's the beard, the face shape.
Mm-hmm.
These gentlemen, there's some similarities. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm
I'll
saying.
give you that.
That's it. So yeah, I mean,
Mason Paris by a million.
there you go. It's pretty perfectly timed. Pretty perfectly timed. No, I mean, yes, this is basically a Homer fest when it comes to the RAF card. We're going, where there's a USA wrestler versus a non-USA wrestler or a gold medalist that is wrestling. We're going with the gold medalist. I guess that's pretty safe to say.
USA,
Yeah.
USA,
But like,
USA.
I will say, I feel like this card could have been better. And I only say that based on Willie saying that so many wrestlers wanted to be on this card on his show. So I feel like there could have been maybe more competition, maybe more parity. I wasn't like just glossing over the David Carr match. I was more so making fun of the fact that we were going complete Homer on every single one of these bouts. But to be serious, I feel like this card, just based on all of those things that were said about how many wrestlers wanted to be on RAF 2, which who knows? I mean, I know they did change the date of this one. It was originally supposed to be October 30th, and they moved it to the 25th. So who's to say that RAF 3 isn't where the wrestlers who are apparently beating down the door to get on a card are going to reside? So I'll say that. But all in all, I mean, it's wrestling. I'll be entertained by watching it or catching highlights or however I take this in whenever it happens. But yeah,
Is it on Fox again?
I think it's I think they still have it on Fox. I wonder why it's not on Rockfin. I don't know. But who cares?
Two birds and one stone again.
Yeah, I'm kind of good at that. But I learned from my elders, I should say. There you go. Or my more experienced or advanced gentlemen.
Yes.
There you go. But let's move to some college wrestling before we get to our conversation with Mike Moyer. There were some wrestle-offs. First one that I had seen was the Purdue wrestle-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Purdue kind of went all out too, like where it is like full recaps and you've got there's a photo gallery and everything else. So props to Purdue on everything that they did for their wrestle-offs, and I'm sure they'll continue to do throughout the season. But just looking at some of the results, I mean, I know I'm not going to steal the one guy that I know Kevin wants to talk about. But Joey Blaze going, full scorched earth, pun intended, during his wrestle-off. But Kevin, I know you were probably paying attention to Purdue. You're a big Purdue guy. So any thoughts from this?
Yeah, so shout out Tanner Lipset, who's always been super accommodating. If we're gonna shout out SIDs on here, I think he actually got promoted to a different role anyway, but he's an awesome dude there at Purdue. I mean, I want to shout out Stony Buell. I guess that's the main one, dude.
That's the guy I knew you were gonna go with.
Yeah, we talked about him, I think, last weekend when I was like, the weight cutting conversation. It's like, look, this dude wrestled like 189 and 215 in high school. And, he cut down to 165 in college. And now he's dropping to 157 because Joey Blaze is going up.
He's huge too.
Dude, I know. He's enormous. He's so tall and like lean, but also there's like muscle packed onto that leanness. And yeah, he's a freak, man. How he made 157 is beyond me. But yeah, so it's gonna be really cool seeing that guy getting out there and doing his Stony Buell stuff. It will be interesting to see how he competes at the lower weight, if it's going to be one of those things where he can, utilize his strength, which is his strength, in a little bit more effective way, or if it's going to be maybe the speed or the weight cut gets to him. I'm not sure, but I am excited to see him go out there and get it done. I also wanted to shout out, if I can find it quick, probably can't find it quick. I think it was Jacob McAtangy at 125 getting a win. I had heard some pretty impressive stuff about McAtangy over Quintero, 9-1, I believe it was. Yeah. And that's just an impressive win. And maybe it's one of those things where, I think Quintero was like a true freshman last year, I believe, and was going into a redshirt freshman year this year. And you've got a junior who's still maybe just kind of, advanced, aging him, a bit. But I think that it's still an impressive win nonetheless for a guy who's trying to get his shot at being in the lineup as a full-time starter. It's got to be tough when you're behind a guy like Ramos, and Ramos has another year and everything, but or had another year last year. But I don't know, man. I'm just looking at this lineup. Blake Borman jumping in there is going to be exciting. Grayson Clark. I love this whole squad, man. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. And then obviously James Rowley coming back from the injury is going to be nice. So he's a guy that
he looked good. He looked really good.
Yeah.
I will say, what else looked really good? Benvenatia's mustache. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's early runner in the best of the year category. That's fantastic.
It's a special stash.
Any other thoughts on Purdue or any other wrestle-offs that you guys had saw that happened, or anything that is coming up that you guys want to draw attention to? Robbie, start with you in the ACC.
Stanford had theirs last week outdoors. Biggest news there is 149. Quincy is moving up from 41 to 49. And I'm trying to find the actual write-up and the results. There we go, inter-squad results. But he had a close match with EJ Parco, which I think is more a result of, just being teammates and being close. So it wasn't super close, 10-4, but closer than I would have expected. The other note that I was interested in, and I think it's just a matter of them having a smaller lineup and finding a good match for Cardenas. But Cardenas was listed at the match was listed at 55 or 57/165. So interesting to look there. Kind of across the board, it wasn't a super competitive. It didn't have all the weights. Their biggest thing was they're trying to figure out their starter for 184, and it's coming down to, looks like Ty Montero and Abraham Ojusevich. I'm going to struggle with that name all the time.
That's fun.
And the only other big takeaway was Brooke Byers, who both Coach Gray and Coach Ayers are super high on, got pinned at 97 by Angelo Posada. So interested to see how that shakes out, because Byers was slated to be the starter. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean. But lots of stuff this upcoming week. UVA, UNC, I think NC State's doing a small one. Virginia Tech's doing a small one, but lots of wrestle-off action this weekend for the ACC.
Yeah.
Gardner Webb had their one last weekend too. They did it outdoors. Gotta love the outdoor wrestle-offs.
Absolutely.
Take full advantage while you can.
This week too. Absolutely.
Austin, anything going on in the EIWA and the Ivy?
EIWA, I know Lehigh's Brown and White is, I think, this Thursday. They have a few spots they need to fill. Looking at 49, 74, 84. There's like 4 or 5 guys in the mix there that are going to compete for the lineup spot. And just knowing how Lehigh and kind of how a lot of teams work, that'll probably be figured out come February. That'll be a season-long process figuring some of those out. Interesting result I did see at Drexel's. They had an inter-squad match. True freshman. I think it's Omar Tunkara from New York, Bronx, New York. He was a Beat the Streets New York kid. Couple-time All-American in Fargo, Prep Nationals All-American, beats the East guy. Actually beat Desmond Pleasant 17-10, and Pleasant was in the rankings last year, high 20s, mid 20s, pretty much a takedown away from NCAs. So that's a good win for a true freshman there. And I don't know if Army's happened yet, Army West Point, but they have 2 heavyweights that are previously national qualifiers, and Brady Colbert and Lucas Stoddard. So Army has a ranked team. I think they're number 23 this year coming in the preseason rankings and intermat. So they have a tough lineup, and making that lineup at heavyweight, you're a national qualifier. You might be riding the bench, which is you can't say a lot at a lot of these schools. So that's a lot of depth here in the NWA.
Is there anything more terrifying than a 260-pound like West Point Army trained person?
No, I don't think there is.
Like, I think that's it. I think we found it.
I think we found it. Yeah.
And then when you're the 65-pounder, his first name is Gunner. That's
Yeah, Gunner
perfect name.
Filipowicz.
Yeah, perfect name for
Great
Army.
names on that team.
Yeah, I love
Great
it.
names on that
They got a
Amazing.
Wolfgang too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Wolfgang
Yep.
variable. Yep.
Frable.
All name team. Nope.
Do
Just
any of them
Army's
have good
lineup.
mustaches though?
I'm sure a
No
lot of
good
them do.
mustaches.
I'm
They
sure a
can't have
lot of them
beards,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
This might be my award for the season.
Mustache of the year.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go with that.
Do it all mustache lineup.
There you go.
One per weight class.
Ooh.
That
I
could
don't know
be-
if 25ers are allowed to grow mustaches. Is that in the bylaws?
That is true.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Could be. I mean, maybe you offer a challenge to see how many 125-pounders see it and start to grow a mustache.
That is really funny though. When you see a little dude who's also hairy, it doesn't happen often, but when you do, it's noticeable.
That's what D'Agostino looked like a caveman back in the day.
Yeah,
He wins every
good
year.
pull. Good pull.
That
So
was
speaking
great.
of hairy and large people, I was at UVA. They had a simulation match day, and I stopped by for a little bit. Nick Hamilton is fucking huge. Also, he's very hairy. That's what made me think of that. But they looked great. We're going to see some shifts in weights there. We're going to have some battles at 41, Kyron Butler and Gable Porter, who's moving up from 33. That'll be a really fun one to keep an eye on.
Kevin, anything that you saw in the MAC, in SoCon, Big Ten, anything like that?
I don't think so. I did see the Gardner Webb thing, and I didn't see any particular results, but I did see that they always have great food at their events. Like they always post pictures of their food, and I'm like, I just want to hang out in Boiling Springs for a minute.
I want to hang out
See
with
what's
those
going
guys.
on. And anytime you can hang out with Daniel Elliott, it's a good time. So, but yeah, I can't think off the top of my head any
Unless
other
it's a
ones that I
smiling
saw.
competition.
Yeah.
Yes, he loses again.
Between him and Jamil, I don't know who would come out on top for that one.
That's gonna be you gotta stare down with that one. That'd be
That would be good. That would be really good. Yeah.
I do want to point out one more time that Ben Bennett scheduled the challenge matches for the day after homecoming.
Genius.
Gotta earn it.
What a move.
The one that I'm looking forward to, it's this week. It's the 24th. It's which I believe is Jamil Kelly's birthday, so I probably make sure to tell him that.
smile for his birthday.
It's very rare. Doesn't really happen. But I'm looking forward to Nebraska's wrestle-off, mostly because, I mean, I know it's long shot in the dark completely, but I would love to see them get Cade Ziola and AJ Ferrari in a wrestle-off. I don't think it'll happen. I do know that they have wrestled in the room, and it's not a slaughter, and it's very close, from what I'm told, right? So I do know that. I do know that these guys are competing very hard in the room, and it's only like, 2 takedowns to 1 or something of that sort.
If Ziola, after a year in a college weight room, is going to be a fucking monster.
He's already huge. He is already huge. I will say that. Like, he is putting some weight on. That is for sure. He is definitely putting some weight on, and he needed it. He was looking like a wacky waving inflatable arm tubing man for the longest. So I'm glad that he is finding the stakes that Ferrari has left over, essentially. But yeah, I think Nebraska
must come in 10 packs, so he gets 2 a day.
Yeah, he gives the freshmen 2 of them, and he gets 8. That's how you do things in Nebraska. But wrestle-offs this week, we'll talk about the All-Star next week. We'll also get to the Navy Classic, as Austin alluded to in the beginning of the show. But I want to get to this interview with Mike Moyer. It was a great conversation. So here's the interview with Mike Moyer. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. So today we're very, very excited to have a special guest. I know we alluded to it last week on last week's show. Happy to have Mike Moyer joining us, Executive Director of NWCA. Mike, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you taking some time and jumping on here for us.
Sure. No, you're welcome. It's great to be with you.
Awesome, awesome. So I know Kevin's got some questions. We all have some as well, but I'm going to let Kevin kind of kick things off.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things I wanted to ask about first, let's start off with the thought. You know what? No, let's go with this. Talk a little bit about the OPC and why you think it's important to have one and to keep one, and what impact it has on the sport overall.
Sure. Well, a little bit of background. How the OPC exists is the National Wrestling Coaches Association is a 98-year-old 501c3 nonprofit. It's the oldest wrestling only organization in the wrestling ecosystem. And one of the things that really makes us unique in relation to all the other organizations in wrestling is that we have an exclusive educationally based wrestling mission. So, in other words, we operate exclusively in the middle school, the high school, and the college wrestling space. And at the end of the day, we're really about two things. We're about developing transformational coaches who provide an exceptional wrestling experience in the spirit of preparing young people for success in life. And then we have, about 10 years ago, we developed an operating division known as Wrestlers and Business Network, where we actually take things one step further and we actually connect our wrestlers with incredible career and internship opportunities. So our value proposition, anybody who steps on a wrestling mat, is we're going to help you get to college, to the trades, to a military, or just a career. So within that umbrella, we have three core competencies, if you will, that our organization really focuses on. The cornerstone is coaching development. We believe that nobody plays a more important role in the future of our sport than the head coach at every level. And our organization focuses more actually on the non-technical tactical aspects of coaching than we do on the technical tactical. Things that those unique skills you have to have when you're in and around the educational environment. The second area of competency is what we call student wrestler well-being. And that's where the optimal performance calculator comes into play. So if we rewind the clock going back to 1997, I had the privilege of being the chairman of the NCAA wrestling committee. So within the NCAA structure, there's a sport committee for every sport. And what had happened in 1997 is we tragically lost three college wrestlers within a 35-day period while engaged in extreme weight loss measures. And a lot of people don't realize how close wrestling came to actually getting shut down. I mean, we were on the verge, we were on the brink. And so the NWCA, and so I was, as the chair of the committee, we were working with sports scientists from around the country to figure out how do we prevent something like this from ever happening again. And when I joined the National Wrestling Coaches Association in 1999, what we really need was an administrative friendly way to administrate and safeguard high school and college wrestlers across the country. So we developed the Optimal Performance Calculator, and it's a web-based program. And again, we worked with some of the leading sports scientists from around the country. And essentially, today there's over 300,000 high school and college wrestlers that are required to go through this protocol. It's a body composition assessment, a weight assessment, a hydration assessment. It gets fed into this calculator and it calculates an ideal competition weight and a safe weight loss plan for wrestlers across the country. What's incredible about this is we've been able, when you talk about making a lemon into lemonade, well, clearly this unhealthy weight loss aspect of our sport really impeded our ability to grow our sport. And now we're in a unique position to really stand tall and know that we really represent the ultimate physical fitness sport. And today we have the body composition and hydration and weight assessment data, over 300,000 young men and women to prove it. And so it's something that we're changing a culture. We've come a long way. We can always get better. And now with the explosion of girls wrestling, there are some really important nutritional things that young ladies need to know to not just optimize their performance while they're competing, but to develop these healthy habits that live with them the rest of their life. So we developed this, but we never wanted to become a technology company, if you will. So we ended up partnering with, we had several partners along the way. Our first partner was track wrestling. So we integrated the weight management program with the tournament software, and there were all kinds of great benefits that came from that. And then it actually got passed along to NBC University, Universal, and one of their subsidiaries was Sports Engine. And more recently, it's been passed along to Flow Wrestling and Flow Sports. And I have to tell you, I mean, Flow, you talk about a partner that's just all in. Not that our other partners weren't, but Flow is all in. I mean, I don't, you know, the way they cover our sport, the way but they very generously give us a pretty significant piece of revenue off of this weight management tournament software tool, which
Nice.
enables us to really fund to a large extent our mission, whether it's starting new programs, saving threatened college programs. Um, um, we do a lot of leadership training programs for high school wrestlers. I could go on and on and on, but really very little of that would ever be possible if it wasn't for the generosity of our partners at Flow. So a lot of people out there say, you know, how can we appreciate what the NWCA does? How can we help? Just know that when you're using that software, you're helping us in a really big way.
Very nice. I got one more I want to get to here real quick. Let me see. Talk a little bit about, I wanted to ask about the dual championships, but I don't think that's quite as important as this. So talk about what's going on at Capitol Hill and kind of, you know, what's been developing and what the impact is going to be there.
Sure. Well, you know, there's a lot to celebrate about our sport. You know, I talked about our three core competencies. I think I got the two of them. Coaching development's the cornerstone. Student wrestler well-being is the second bucket. The third bucket is advocacy. And one of the things we're really proud about is since 2000, we've helped to start 466 intercollegiate men's and women's wrestling programs. And a lot of people don't realize, most people don't realize this, but 211 of those are women's intercollegiate programs. And the message I want to just send out to a lot of those young boys and girls, men and women wrestling across the country, there's a place for everybody to compete in college. It doesn't matter if you have 1 year of experience or 20 years of experience. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of scholarship opportunities out there. And so in recent years, we've been adding between 30 and 50 college programs a year. Now, the thing to know about that is most of these new programs are at the Division II, the Division III, NAIA, junior college levels. And what's driving that renaissance is that there's about 2 million fewer college students today than there were 5 years ago. So these colleges and universities across the country are hemorrhaging enrollment. And wrestling is a very attractive because it's relatively inexpensive. We have this huge population of high school boys and girls that wrestle and a very limited number of college opportunities. So it's something we should all celebrate. And there's lots of organizations around the country that join us in growing the sport. I think most people know that between 1972 and 1999, we lost over 550 college teams. And the ramifications of that is that's historically where we've trained teachers and coaches. And we develop officials and fans and all the alumni we have in all these different industries. And maybe we can talk about Wrestlers and Business Network a little bit later on as well. But we can get to the top of almost any industry in 1 or 2 phone calls because of this wrestling network that we have. So anyway, while we can celebrate all of that, there is no question that maybe our greatest challenge that we've had is we're faced with, if anyone's following what's going on in the NCAA at the Division I level. And long story short is there was a lawsuit some college athletes filed against the NCAA. It's referred to as the NCAA versus House lawsuit. House Grant House was a swimmer, and he and some other athletes sued the NCAA because the NCAA rules forever and a day prevented an athlete from going to the local car dealer and being paid to do a commercial or sign autographs or those kinds of things. And so the rules were very restrictive, and they sued, and the NCAA had settled this out of court with the athletes. It was a class action lawsuit. And so as a result, there's a couple ramifications that are going to create significant financial pressures, primarily at the Division I level. The first one is that the way the NCAA business model works, most of the revenue comes from the NCAA basketball championship. A lot of people don't realize the college football, that's not run by the NCAA. So the money that's generated from college football stays primarily with the Power Four conferences. But the basketball tournament is what. So as a result of the basketball tournament, all 360 Division I programs get a disbursement of funds from that billion-dollar enterprise. And it's a complex formula. It's based on the number of sports you have and how many scholarships you have and all kinds of incentives in there. Well, as a result of this $2.8 billion settlement, that's going to mean that these 360 Division I schools will be receiving a reduced distribution from the NCAA of between $300,000 and $1.5 million each year for the next 10 years. So the truth of the matter is the Power Four schools, the Big 10 and the Big 12 and 8, those schools are going to be able to afford the $1.5 million. The mid-majors, that $300,000, $400,000 is going to hurt, but nevertheless, they can still figure out how to overcome that. The bigger challenge is that athletic departments today may now share up to $20.5 million of the revenue with the athletes. Doesn't mean you have to share all $20.5 million. You could share $1,000 or $20.5 million or anything in between there. And as you can imagine, very few of the 360 Division I athletic departments have an extra $20.5 million laying around. And so without any intervention, what's likely to happen is you'll see a mass reallocation of resources away from the Olympic sports and to football, men's and women's basketball. Just for definition purposes, when I talk about Olympic sports, even though basketball is an Olympic sport for the context of this discussion, we're talking about sports, men's and women's sports other than football and basketball.
Yeah.
So as a result, we have a very capable lobbying firm down in Washington, D.C., and there's 4 coaches associations, 4 Olympic sport coaches associations that are kind of part of like a loosely put together executive committee. And we represent 20 other Olympic sport coaches associations. And we've been, so the 4 of us, it's wrestling, swimming, volleyball, and track. We've been really narrowed things down to 2 priorities that we are trying to convince members of Congress to put into any antitrust bill that might be able to make its way through the different layers of approval in Congress. The first one is that there's a requirement that you have to have a minimum of 16 sports as a condition for this antitrust protection. And by the way, the reason the antitrust protection is so important is the lawsuits are lined up as far as the eye can see against the NCAA. Like anytime they try to limit anything, they get taken to court and they get sued over antitrust. So like the longest time, wrestling was allowed 9.9 scholarships. That's an antitrust violation. So today you're allowed a roster of 30, and by default, the maximum number of scholarships you can offer is 30. I don't think anyone's going to give 30, but to just give an example, when we talk about antitrust, the NCAA would try to limit costs because the lower the costs are, the more sports athletic departments can have. But there's been so many lawsuits, that's a thing of the past. So long story short, we want to have a minimum of 16 sports. That's been an NCAA bylaw for probably 30 or 40 years. It's just a lot easier to change a bylaw than it is an antitrust law. So there's something called the SCORE Act, which has emerged out of the House of Representatives down in Capitol Hill. And we've been successful in getting that priority into this draft SCORE Act. The SCORE Act still has a ways to go to where it's going to go to the House for an actual vote, but nevertheless, it's in there. We're now pushing hard for the second priority, which would be to require universities to have a minimum funding floor, like a percentage of the athletic department budget that has to go to the sports other than football and basketball, because our concern is without this, they'll keep 16 sports, but they might fund them as if they're a club sport or an intramural sport. Just defund them so badly where they only exist in name only. So the good news is these 20 sports that we're representing actually represent 78% of the athletes in college. And so we have a good story to tell, and it's been received very well by both sides of the aisle. But until we actually get it in to this SCORE Act, we can't rest. And then once we get the, whether it's the SCORE Act or any other bill that makes its way through the House of Representatives, there'll be a Senate version. And we're going to want to get our two priorities into the Senate version. And then those two bills will get reconciled. And hopefully when all the smoke clears, we have these two priorities in there. And the only other thing I'll just say is that the 16 sport minimum and the minimum funding floor does not prevent carnage. It just limits it, because there's a lot of athletic departments across the country that currently have more than 16 sports. So that wouldn't prevent them from going from 28 sports down to 16, but it would certainly limit and reduce the amount of carnage that would take place. The last thing I'll just say about it is, I mean, obviously this is a threat for all sports. Like this is not just a wrestling thing. But what I'll say is our sport has overcome a lot over the years. And our wrestling community is just more battle tested. Like as long as the wrestling program doesn't get dropped, our coaches are prepared to make it work, no matter what it is. They will figure it out. When you think back, we talked about the 3 weight loss related deaths that occurred. We've overcome that, and now we're widely considered as the ultimate physical fitness sport. There was a time when we lost 550 college wrestling programs. We've responded with 466 new ones. Wrestling got bounced out of the Olympics. Not only is it back in there, but Team USA is a world power. Like, the resolve in the wrestling community is like really nothing else. And I don't say that to suggest this is going to be easy. This won't be easy at all. But the wrestling community, whatever it takes, we'll figure out how to make sure we make the best of it.
Yeah. Austin?
Yeah, you're kind of talking my language here, because I cover the EIWA and a little bit of Ivy schools, so the NIL and things like that. High money is not quite talked about as much.
Sure.
So my question to you was, what kind of things are you seeing from these smaller programs to help survive and ultimately not get cut? And what can these fans do? Is that just buy season tickets, donate to the programs, things like that, just to keep these programs afloat?
Sure. Well, one of the programs we do, another program, and this goes back to the weight management program, the track wrestling tournament system, but every year we pay all expenses for up to one year. I think we had almost 150 college coaches to attend. We do this comprehensive CEO Leadership Academy. So we pay for their flights, their lodging, their meals, their tuition. We pay for everything. And for 2 days, we talk about all of these CEO skills. And to really consolidate things, it boils down to focusing on 4 areas. It focuses on developing strong relationships. We focus on making sure your program is relevant. To your point, what can fans do to help show up for those matches? If an athletic director walks into a home dual meet and sees a couple thousand people there, that athletic director is going to say, this is the last sport I'm going to drop. They'll turn this place upside down. So we got to make sure wrestling is as relevant as could ever be. If you build strong relationships and you make your program relevant, the revenue will follow. You'll have boosters, you'll have friends, you'll sell tickets. All those things result as a byproduct of doing those first 2 well. And then the last one is we just need to be realistic. It's important that coaches are realistic about their circumstances. Realistic doesn't mean be complacent. It doesn't mean be happy where you're at, but it does mean know where you're at. And you want to make sure you're competing at a level commensurate with the resources you have And the goal is to keep getting more resources so you can make your way up the ladder. But those four kind of pillars actually apply to high school wrestling as well. There's fiscal pressures at the high school level, nothing like what we're seeing at the Division I level. But there's more and more school districts across the country requiring students to pay in order to play sports. And our high school coaches need to be focused on those same four things. But that's really in our coaching development where we put a lot of energy. We have a modified version of this academy for high school coaches. It's a 1-day, 4-hour workshop. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico on Friday and Saturday morning. I was in Reno on Sunday. I was in Anchorage, Alaska a couple weeks ago. But we're not going to ever let cost be a barrier. And we just want to make sure that our coaches have these critical skills so they're not just relying on institutional funding to do what they're trying to do. But as we've said earlier, the Division I level is by far and away where we're the most threatened, as is every Olympic sport. And this is going to require the whole wrestling community to roll up their sleeves and do their part.
Yeah.
Robbie?
So, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. I know you have a hard out here in a few minutes. So I'm actually going to pass on my question because there's a couple that Ryan had in our floating document here that I wanted him to get to because I think they're good questions. So I'm going to pass it back to Ryan.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So the first one that I had for you, Mike, was we have national duels, we have collegiate duels, right? I wanted to know, one, what are your thoughts on events like that, and how close do you think we can be to having a true national duels champion where not just a couple of select teams are involved, but our top teams like Penn State. Penn State is at the collegiate duels, are not going to be at national duels. How do we make sure that our top teams are involved in our biggest events? And do you feel like we are any closer to having a true national duels champion?
Sure. I mean, we're definitely a lot closer. And bottom line is this goes back to making our sport relevant. When you think of every mainstream spectator sport in America, what do they have in common, right? They have parity, they have unpredictable outcomes, and they have the outcome of every regular season competition determines who gets into the postseason. I don't know about you guys. I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan. I'm a Philly fan. I watch every game until they're mathematically eliminated. Then I really don't watch again. Until my team's mathematically eliminated, I'm all in. And I've always felt like the NFL does it best. Almost every team is 8-8 on the last week of the season. They all have a chance to get into the playoffs. Their fan bases they're all on board. The media is all on board. You have this excitement. You have this drama. And but you have to get started. And Chad Richardson at Paycom, what an unbelievable thing. I mean, imagine Fortune 500 company investing $1 million in the sport of wrestling. That makes wrestling relevant, right? It's going to be nationally televised on ESPN, the finals. The preliminary rounds will be on Flow Sports. It's the more big moments we have in our sport, the more our sport's going to be relevant. And with respect to just getting all the teams there, we just have to make it so great that the teams want to be there. I mean, could you imagine a football team opting out of the college football playoffs, right? I mean, the amount of money, the amount of prestige. I mean, no one could say no. And it's up to the wrestling community to make this event an event like that. And maybe it starts off as a kickoff event, much like I think in NASCAR is the Daytona 500, I think is a kickoff event. So it's not unusual to have a kickoff event like this, but maybe one day it ends up at the other end of the season and the teams are wrestling their way into it. To your point, it is an invitational now, but maybe it can develop into something where the teams compete. We also provide something for all the other divisions, for the Division I mid-majors and Division II, Division III NAIA. That's January 9th and 10th, University of Northern Iowa. It's slightly over 100 college teams. They compete for a national dual meet championship within their respective divisions. What I love about the dual meet, what fans love and what the media loves is they love unpredictable outcomes. And in a dual meet, one upset changes the whole thing. I was a former coach. I didn't want anything to be unpredictable. I want everything to be predictable. But the fans and the media want the opposite. And I just think sometimes as a wrestling community, we have to decide what we want. Do we want our sport to be really relevant? And if we do, we have to be mindful of what the fans and the media want. And these dual meets, create those moments. I would tell you, the average number of home dual meets at the high school level nationally is 3. Like, how the heck do we make high school wrestling relevant with 3 home dual meets? Like we got to get better at that. And what I love about the dual meet at the high school level is that usually what determines whether you win or not is not what your best wrestler does. It's what your not so good wrestler. The hero of the night could be the wrestler that lost 15-0 and didn't get pinned. I'll go to my grave saying I think dual meets, we have to make sure. I don't want to do anything to harm those crown jewel individual championships that we have, whether high school state tournaments or national tournaments, but we got to figure out how to get back to dual meets and really strengthen our relevancy in schools and in communities across the country.
Yeah. The only other question I had for you, you talked about the OPC and putting together something that now looks at the safety in sports. And you spoke about us losing some wrestlers, some odd years ago,
Sure.
but a lot of things have changed where we've got a lot more things put in place to have those guardrails. And I know saunas is kind of a sticking point for a lot of people. Do you see that ever becoming more of a prevalent thing where now that it's able to be monitored and it can be part of the OPC as a safety measure, actually being implemented in a safe way?
Yeah, I think what's challenging about that, there's no doubt that the most elite athletes, wrestlers around the country use the saunas extensively, the world level, the Olympic level. Well, we just have to be careful. It's kind of like a NASCAR driver could say, why do I have to be restricted to driving 55 miles an hour on the highway when I can drive however fast they drive on the weekend, 200 miles an hour, whatever the case might be. It's elite athletes know how to use the sauna and steam rooms. They're trained at a much higher level. The challenge is when the non-elite athlete tries to emulate those practices of the elite athlete, and to a large extent, that's what happened back in 1997. So, you just, for that to happen, it just needs to be some way of making sure we're also safeguarding the critical masses of athletes that maybe they're not that NASCAR driver. They're they're on the roads, and for good reason, there's a limit to how fast they're allowed to go, myself included.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I really appreciate it. And I know, each one of us really appreciates you coming on.
Sure.
Before you go, is there anything else that you kind of want to put out into the community? Any initiatives or anything that's happening with NWCA that we didn't speak about?
There's a lot going on, and I would welcome the opportunity to just do more of these. It's it's an honor, privilege to serve the wrestling community, and we got an unbelievable team of people here in the NWCA that work tirelessly to make that happen, and we got a lot of great stories to tell, and we just need the help from folks like you to help us tell it. And so appreciate the opportunity, and happy to come back whenever it's convenient.
For sure. We'd love to have you back on. We appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing some of the things that you guys have. And like I said, anytime you want to come back, certainly let us know.
Thank you. Keep your hips low and your elbows in tight. Keep your feet moving. Remember the hand fight.
Always.
Take care.
Well, dude, thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. So an awesome conversation with Mike Moyer. Robbie surprised me by punting your question over to me. I know, we all had some different things we wanted to ask him. He did go a little long on some of his answers, which I honestly didn't want to interrupt him because it was great information, right? Like, we all obviously had questions, but it was great information that he was giving us on what's happening, whether it is the bills that he is in or OPC or anything else like that. So great conversation. But Kevin, as the person that did all the legwork to set this up, I want to know your thoughts on the conversation with Mike Moyer and some of the things that we talked about.
Well, I'm glad he went into detail with a lot of it because so much of it is so layered. You know what I mean? And to think about, just the waves and the reverberations that one thing causes. And I mean, you talked about the OPC. I mean, that's something that obviously had been worked on in 97 and is still incredibly impactful today and clearly has had some great, long-term safety effects, and even something as, maybe seemingly less important, but just the view from the outside of the sport. I remember growing up in high school, people literally like all the time, like parents of my friends would be like, "Oh, that's really dangerous. You shouldn't do that." And I can't remember the last time I've heard any parents say that, or any of my, I guess, peers at this point in my advanced age. Anytime I talk to them about my son being in the sport, they're like, "Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've heard, great things." Like, very rarely does the weight thing come up. So in the court of public opinion, it's going well. But no, I mean, it was really great. I want to get to in the future more stuff on, Wrestlers in Business Network. I think, as somebody who's been signed up and a member for a long time, I don't feel like I get the most results out of it. And that's a me problem, right? That's not necessarily the group's problem. So I want to understand, hey, how does somebody like me get more involved in my community and in my area and make sure that this is an effective program for the young wrestlers and the old heads like myself. So a lot more to get to with Mr. Mike Moyer, but I thought it was a good interview.
Yeah. Robbie, you did, as I said, punt your question over to me, but what did you take away from the conversation with Mike?
I think it was a lot of positivity, and that was part of why I punted my question. Is mine may have been a little bit more negatively slanted, or we've taken the discussion in a more negative direction. And I think it was more important to keep it positive. A lot of growth, a lot of behind the scenes stuff that they're doing, and gives a good conversation about the house settlement and all the inner workings of that and how it's, they're working on Capitol Hill within coaching groups to try to eliminate some of the impact that the negative impact that has or can have on wrestling. So I'm glad to hear that is as organized as it is.
Yeah. Austin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off what Robbie said. He was very positive. I had a question about small schools, and I feel like I've been on the pessimistic end of that a little bit, just 'cause I see how NIL is affecting these small programs, just kind of talking to coaches behind the scenes and just seeing the extra steps they have to do that maybe the bigger schools don't need to because there's not as many resources around. So I think he answered it perfectly. Like, hey, we have all these talks and we have people that come in, we fly them here. I didn't know that was all on their dime. I thought the schools were
Yeah.
paying for that, which is great. It's helped getting more like-minded people in the same room and bouncing ideas off each other, what works, what doesn't work, and kind of have a path moving forward. And it seems like everyone's on the same page with that, which is obviously great because we don't want to see schools lose programs, and the ones that are losing programs are the smaller schools that may not be able to afford it. And I put that in quotes because they can afford it, they just choose not to most of the time. So it was glad to hear from him, and it was a great interview. I hope we have him back, maybe once a month thing, just to see where things are going and what kind of the focus is for the next few months or whatever that is. So I like the idea.
Yeah, it was definitely eye-opening because we had seen the tweets of him being in Washington, right? But we didn't really have the whole breadth of what he was doing. But like you said, I love that he made it a point, and obviously somebody who has been part of NWCA for as long as he has his points down, right? And you knew that, he was going to be a very polished interview and that he had the things that he wanted to get to and he got to them, but he also answered our questions and gave us, at least that where it wasn't just as people would probably expect talking point after talking point when you do have somebody that is part of an organization and the executive director of an organization as he is. And, I love the fact that he made it a point to say, we fly these guys here and we make sure to have these kinds of conversations. But then in the vein of him talking about losing wrestlers and, knowing that losing 3 wrestlers was kind of the crux of this whole no saunas rule and how there's been so much, I guess, over the years, there's so many people saying that saunas should now be legal, at least on the college level. I wanted him to speak to that, right? Because he spoke about the OPC and the different things that they've put in place with hydration testing and making sure that weight cutting isn't being done so dangerously. So in that vein, I wanted to know, like, where do we stand on saunas now, right? Where it is something that we can implement. I think he had a great analogy of like, you don't want somebody, or at least a coach, that doesn't know how to monitor these types of things, utilizing it for inexperienced wrestlers, and there obviously are a number of wrestlers and teams that have saunas in their facilities, but it is reserved for RTC use, which is a workaround for the NCAA and people that have outlawed sauna use to say, well, we'll just mandate it as an RTC thing, right? So I think that he gave a great answer there, and obviously I'm looking forward to the text message that I get from Nick Costco talking about national duels as well. So I know Nick is on that committee of wanting a national duels, and Nick did a great job last year in the preseason of asking the different coaches about how they felt about it, and it was good to actually get Mike's kind of stamp on it as well. So again, we appreciate Mike coming on. We look forward to having more coaches and more people on throughout the year, and getting some more content too.
Two other quick points I wanted to make was one of which was just how important it is that partnering, I mean, with Flow in this instance, to have more money coming in and to really help them do the things that they're there to do. So that's huge. And then, I mean, it's just so frustrating to me when I hear wrestling people be like, oh, basketball, that sport sucks or whatever. And it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe support March Madness, because that's like the #1 driver of revenue for all of the sports, as it turns out. You know what I'm going to do a lot more now? Watch these games. I'm going to try to support it a lot more. I'm going to follow college basketball a little bit more closely. I don't have that much.
I'm going to bet more money on college basketball.
Yeah, that's more or less what I'm saying.
Now it's allowed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even the wrestlers can do it now, as it turns out.
Yeah, they're working on having that.
Nelson Brands
we got to
angry.
get to that one. Maybe next week we'll talk about that as we get to the season. We'll talk about betting on college sports. Kevin, you had a second point, right? Wasn't there something?
No, that was it. It was the Flow money being helpful, and it's okay to like college basketball wrestling.
It's okay to like other sports.
Yeah, you can do that.
You can definitely do that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely awesome. I feel like people hate Flow because they hate Flow, or people like Flow because they like Flow, whatever, whichever end of the spectrum you fall on. I worked there for 7 years, and I do owe them that platform that I had for as long as I did, and a lot of the friendships that I had, including the 3 that I have on camera right now, right? Like, without being there, I don't have the connections that I had, or that I have now. I don't talk to a lot of the people that I talk to on a daily or weekly basis. So, do they have issues and things that they need to fix? Certainly. But him highlighting the good things that they do as well, that's fair, right? But I think criticism of Flow or anyone, including us, which we get, is all fair game. But yeah, I like that he pointed that out and let people know they are, signing a check for us to do some of the things and truly help in the sport. But yeah, certainly good call outs from him, good insight from him. Looking forward to having him on again. Even getting, Scotty Sentes to come on as well at some point, and him talk about his role now that he is with Wrestlers in Business too. So, yeah, appreciate him for coming on. Really looking forward to having more insight. Looking forward to having everyone's insight too. Once you guys listen and kind of watch the interview, the full interview, make sure that you do throw those comments in or reach out to us and let us know how you feel. Cool. Well, gentlemen, I think that's a wrap. Episode 23, that Michael Jordan episode, is now in the books. So again, we appreciate you guys listening and watching our stupidity. Even when we do button it up a little bit, when we have a guest on, we do behave ourselves, as you guys can see.
That just means I don't talk as much.
This is true.
Robbie had a chance to talk and was like, someone else talk. Someone else
do it. Somebody else do it.
Ryan, you talk.
Can't do it. No, but it's like I said, it's awesome to have anybody that wants to jump on and is insightful to come on. But yeah, this is a wrap for episode 23. Appreciate our sponsors, Poseidon Strength, as well as Adidas Wrestling. Make sure you're using those discount codes at checkout, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.